Well, today is the 1st of January 2022, so Happy New Year. It'll be interesting to see where this year takes everybody, that's for sure. The last 2 years have been damn interesting. Okay, the first story I decided to tell was back in the early 80s. I lived in Fiji for about a month or two with the Fijians, and that's another whole story about how that all happened as well. While I was there, I had heard about a place called Vatulele, and it is 34 kilometres off the coast of Fiji, which is called Viti, which means big island. And I heard some really about how beautiful it was, and I just kept hearing about Vatulele from my Fijian friends, and found out that they came in boats once every few days to about once or twice a week or something to get their groceries. Anyway, so I heard about this place and decided that I would love to go, but I was promptly told that white people didn't actually go to Vatulele, and I'm like, well, why? And they just said, oh, it's just not a place that tourists have really heard of, and I'm just like, well, I'd like to go and see it because it was still in its pristine state. It was still this lovely place, and anyway, I was rather interested to go and see some place that was still, it wasn't primitive, but it was still in its natural state, would be the best way to put it. And so anyway, I started asking around to find out how I could get there, and my Fijian friends were wonderful. They went off and found out what I had to do, and I found out that I had to give the chief of Vatulele a present, and everybody recommended that I give him like a roll of tobacco. And I'm just like, I didn't know you could buy rolls of tobacco, but let's do that. I think the whole thing took about a week to organise, and heard back, and the chief had given me permission to go over there, and so my Fijian friends are all like, okay, now what you can't do is if everybody's sitting in a circle, you can't walk across the middle of the circle because that's just rude. And then they gave me a couple of other things, do's and don'ts, and how to act and what to do. Me, I was just excited to be going somewhere really different, and just loved the idea, and I just wandered off. Most of my travelling was done that way. I would just wander off somewhere because, oh, that looks like an interesting place to go. Let's go there. And so anyway, I was told, be on the beach with your bags at the crack of dawn tomorrow. And so off I went. I'm on the beach, and the place was just filled with people. There was just women and people everywhere. It was men too, obviously, but there was more women, and everybody was talking, and there was groceries and bags of stuff all sitting all on the beach. And so anyway, the boats had pulled in, and they were like long rowboats, basically, is the best way to describe them. And but they were quite big. I couldn't begin to hazard a guess at how big they were, but I figured that they'd hold maybe 10, 15 people. But because they were taking so much groceries and shopping and bags, and God, there was so much of it, each boat probably held around about 10 people, I'd say. And so anyway, I got down there, and everybody was milling around and talking, and then the boats came in, and there was four of them, four. And so what happened was that when the boats came in, all of a sudden there's this flurry of movement, and everybody's running down, and then they're packing the boats and all this stuff. And you could tell they'd done that a lot of times before because they just did the most amazing job, and it was so fast. And while I was chatting to people on the beach, I found out that the reason there were so many women there was because they were an a cappella group from Vatulele, and it just so happened that they just had a really big, on the mainland and a few other islands as well, this massive a cappella contest. And these women from Vatulele had won, so they were all floating around and having a wonderful time. They were all so excited and thrilled, and it was just this really happy, like a festive kind of feel on the beach. And so anyway, so the boats were all packed, and then we all piled, and everybody's just in different places, and off we went. And the funny thing about it was that there was so much in the boats and the people that we were only about this far above the waterline. Because it was just so weighted down. And anyway, thank God it was a nice, clear, lovely, smooth water. Wasn't very windy or anything, so off we go. And because I think it's just safety reasons or something, the boats were all spread out across the water, and so we could still see everybody, but everybody was far enough away where, like if some rogue wave came or the wind suddenly picked up or something, we're not going to get slammed into each other. And so anyway, so we're cruising along across the water and in these boats, and I'm just having a lovely time. It's like we've got 32 kilometres of ocean. It took like about a couple of hours to get over there, and which I was really pleased about, the nice calm weather, because I'm thinking, one little wave and these boats are going to go down, mate. It's full. And so anyway, while we're cruising across the water, all of a sudden, way in the distance, one of the women started singing. And because the women were all spread out amongst the four boats, all of a sudden somebody from another boat, somebody from my boat, somebody from another boat, these women all started singing. And because we were on the water and it was just still water, the sound just carried everywhere until we just surrounded by singing and this music from their singing. And of course, being a cappella, it was absolutely beautiful. It was just these women, just this beautiful sound that these women were making, and just it carried so beautifully across the water. And I'm just like in heaven, sitting there listening to this beautiful. There's no real words to describe how surreal it was for a start. He's sitting in the middle of the ocean in these boats going to some tiny little island with all these Fijians who just happen to have won a cappella contest, the day before I'm going to be going on the boat with them. And it was just, and they were wonderful. I could see why they won. They were absolutely wonderful. And it was a rather amazing experience to be there with these women and all these lovely people, and to hear this. God, I wish it'd be lovely if I'd recorded it or something. It would have been amazing to listen to. But that was how the trip started off to Vatulele, and then it just got better from there. So off we went to Vatulele.